Vegas, or Dubai for that matter.
Actually, where I live, like not where I live, but right next door, like where my wife works, is in Lake Havasu, which is actually hotter than Las Vegas. So, yeah, like we're used to being here in the armpit. But yeah, the general the everythingness of Las Vegas is what it is.
Well, it's not just the temperature. Las Vegas, yes.
Yeah. Not just the boiling outside temperature, but morning, guys. All right, so we got.
I believe we got Cora.
Yeah, we are 6, so that should be Cora.
6. No, we've only got 6. Oh yeah, we've got 6 and 10. That's that's Cora. Yeah. So go on, Mr. Dean.
All right then. Stepping in to chair the meeting in Kevin's absence today. Tex, do you know if we had anything on the agenda or carryover items from last week that did not get addressed?
I'm unaware explicitly, but I'm just going to check. I think there's still work going on the remit, but I think that's kind of been just like a consistent one. Yeah, there was an email. Let's see, an email from the consensus team. Something about a VRF tiebreaker.
Right, so we need to have that put on the agenda. I think that needs to be put up. Let's construct the agenda for next week. Let's put that on the agenda for next week, right?
Just for context, the VRF tiebreaker was back in the past. Smaller delegated SPOs would be favored in a height battle, and they would get a reward versus the larger delegated body. That was recognized as being skewed and not truly 50-50 or equal chances if there's more than 2. So it was
a very interesting little bug. It was
corrected to be actually fair, quote unquote, and then the community pushed back against that at some point and said that's not fair because we want to.
Or rather, we want it to be unfair.
Yeah, we want it to be unfair, or to be more politically correct, we want it to be supportive of smaller pools, was the way they put it. But of course, there's potential security concerns about that and ways people can manipulate that. So it's been a back and forth discussion.
Yeah. So can I suggest a phrasing here, which is designer fairness, which I have used in the past, where the notion of Bernoulli fairness and human beings' concept of fairness differs. So they need a designed fairness. No?
The thing I've always thought about this debate is that, like, if you want to make it deliberately unfair, make it deliberately unfair in a deliberate way, not like this kind of like, there was this bug which happened to,
it was a passive,
in a very small corner case, slightly advantage someone, which we fixed.
So
and then
to have this discussion, and I think one of the tech when we put this up, so one of the pieces of input I would like to see, please, is how different is it from Bernoulli, from mathematically fair? Let's call it mathematically fair. How much difference does it introduce? Has somebody quantified that, please? Right.
Okay. I'm putting a note for next week's agenda. That's the VRF height battle fairness and or unfairness, depending on how you look at it.
It's not really a height battle, it's just a VRF tie-breaking.
Yeah.
VRF tiebreaker, that's what, okay.
Yes.
Right, I mean, I know functionally how it works, but yeah, I wasn't sure exactly what we were calling it. So we'll add that to the agenda next week. We did get Ouroboros phalanx proposed, at least in the CIP directory. Which is, it looks like, to address anti-grinding and one of the other grinding attacks, actually. So that could be something for...
So how do we want to deal with this? Do we want to deal with this by somebody us having to go and read the papers, which is one possibility? Should somebody present it to us? Should we delegate somebody, one of our body or a couple of our body, to go and read it and present it to us? How do we want to? Because the idea of all of us going reading the paper and getting up to date doesn't sound like a good use of time.
And which one is it? Is this the thing? Is this from the researchers? And is this the thing about having a verifiable delay function to reduce
I
The-
think
the
so,
block
yeah,
is
from
grind?
Nicholas Hennon,
Oh.
it's been proposed, and so it's
Okay.
it's Paras. It looks like settlement time and anti-grinding rolled into one batch of upgrades to Ouroboros. By the
Oh,
looks of it.
including
I mean,
Paras?
it says that it solves CPS 17, which is settlement speed, and CPS
Okay.
21, which is Ouroboros randomness manipulation. So
Oh, but then it's an alternative to Paras,
yeah,
Which-
it could be an alternative.
which is what my understanding of it was.
Okay.
I mean, it's not a one-for-one alternative to Paras. It like solves a slightly different set of problems, but it would reduce settlement time substantially by eliminating the grinding component of the long settlement times. Settlement times are long in part because an attacker in principle can grind stuff, and so if you eliminate their ability to grind, then that dramatically reduces the number of blocks you have to wait. And so in some sense, for some use cases, that might be an alternative to Paras. It doesn't give you settlement times that are as short as Paras, but it gives you settlement times that are more guaranteed rather than opportunistic. Whereas Paras says, oh, hooray, it turned out that your transaction actually is final now, or with a high degree of probability. But it doesn't let you predict it in advance, whereas the anti-grinding is in the guaranteed category. So I was always very favorable to it because it's much simpler, the anti-grinding stuff, than Paras, and it doesn't have nearly the same costs, and it has a benefit for everyone. So if it can mean that the use cases of Paras are covered for enough users, brilliant. It's a much simpler solution. I've never been very fond of Paras, which I think most people know. Well, anyone who pays attention to what I think knows that I don't like Paras. Not that anyone should particularly pay attention. There we are. There's a 30-second summary, if you like.
Okay, well, appreciate that. I think
it's genuinely interesting, and it could present us with a dilemma of like, do you want to do this instead of Paras, or as well as, or whatever.
So it sounds to me the way we should do this is go and read it, we understand it, work out what the how does this affect strategic activity, right? Is that right? That's the question that we're being asked, right? And then we can say, then is it something we wish to make a statement? The GSC thinks this, or is it something to which we say, because if it really does form if we can somehow state it in such a way that people can say you can have this or this costs almost nothing to do, this costs all this effort. Do you want to do it?
And ongoing maintenance.
Ongoing maintenance, right? Then we make that statement, and then we have to get the community. We may end up in the situation if the community. The thing that may then happen is that actually the community has decided that it doesn't want to continue doing Paras, and then we've got this problem of what do we do next? Okay, but I think
right.
Because we've already committed to pay for doing Paras.
I was going to say there's already existing proposals,
but that doesn't mean that you have to do it. And remember that it comes as a trade-off, right? It costs something. It's not just like code complexity. It's actual increases network traffic, and to the extent that it does, it is documented in the report for Paras.
Whereas the anti-grinding shouldn't increase. It doesn't increase communication.
The complexity is fairly local.
Yeah.
Right. You just have to have you have to compute a verifiable delay function in the header, I think, or maybe the block body. I'm not quite sure. It depends how it's been done. That has to be computed, but it's fairly local to the protocol. It doesn't incur lots of computational cost on. It doesn't add any extra size.
But very viable delay functions can consume a large amount of CPU.
Right, but it's how big do you need to tune it?
Right.
And the intuition is that the attacker who has to grind millions of alternatives,
Yes.
If the verifiable delay function is like a millisecond,
Yes, that's enough.
then the block producers only have to compute a millisecond. The people who verify the blocks, it's much less than that. And the people that have to grind a million alternatives, it's a million milliseconds.
Can only do it at 1,000
or whatever.
a second. They can only do it at 1,000 a second. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
per CPU. that they have. And of course they can. So anyway, the point is you can tune the size of the verifiable delay function, but there's a massive factor difference between the attacker that has to grind stuff because they have to compute millions of possibilities versus the honest people only have to compute one. And that's the asymmetry which it leverages. So it's quite a clever idea.
Oops. Yeah.
Okay, so what I was trying to say is I have to review this anyway in my role as a CIP editor. So I'm going to be doing that, which is more of a grammar check and a formatting check in terms of the CIP and not necessarily a technical assessment. And then I will ask the author or authors if they're willing to, essentially present the TLDR to the technical steering committee at a future meeting. So I'm going to take that as a takeaway from this meeting, and we'll see if we can add that to the agenda for next week.
Yeah. You also have a solve for the DREP involvement because I checked the historical icons on gov.tools and the vision and roadmap was verified with anti-grinding as a part of it. So I'll put the link in.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Johnny. All right, so yeah, trucking along here. Terrence did bring up text, sorry. We had the Plutus team kind of go rogue a little bit this past week, or not this past week, but it's been happening, and it's something to address internal to Intersect, in that they are just kind of spinning up their own new private repos, thinking of maybe or maybe not taking them public at some point, but then they already exist under the Intersect MBO organization within GitHub, and then have come along with all the kind of fringe benefits and or drawbacks that may or may not
Could we go more concrete? Could we go more concrete? Why did they feel the need? Could we go more concrete? Could you tell us what really happened and why the concern?
Yes. So basically, they discussed in their team, as I understand it, they discussed in their team and decided that a particular build that they were doing did not need to be convoluted within the Plutus repo itself. And my understanding is, I don't know how or when specifically, because I haven't gone to find the recordings quite yet. I don't know if I've been given a link, but they must have made a decision that said, hey, let's do this in a different repo. Individual contributors right now, and I'm still in the process of researching this, are able to create repos under the Intersect organization when they are logged in or registered or whatever, but they are only eligible to create private repos. So there's a good step here where it comes to me because I have to see it before I can make it public. But I still do have a concern where where repos in general are being created when it hasn't gone through any process of Intersect agreeing to manage another repo. So I'm working on or planning on putting a process together for that, but I don't want to do that in a shell. And I think it'd be really important to have insight from you all, even if it were a baseline list that says, yes, we want to create a repo, no, we don't.
Well, I think the point is, I don't think we can. Do we wish to stop individuals creating private repos at all inside Intersect organization? That'd be the first question, right? I don't see why, but that would be the first question. And the second question is, what's the mechanism by which a new public repo can be proposed? Because actually,
that's the larger issue.
Yeah. But the first issue is so they have decided they want this and they want it. They want it to be public. Do they want it to be public? Right, they do want it to be public. Okay.
They're just not able to make it
so
public.
Now they're going, hey, we think this is ready to be public, and that's what kind of.
Sorry, why?
Well, an individual contributor can create
where
it,
and how did
work
Intersect
on it with
get this
anybody
repo?
else?
So the point is, most organizations like this people have remits, and in order to do something, you have what do you call it? You have your remit at the top.
Decision flow chart. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's not really a decision flow. It's sort of your governance rules, your remits. What areas you're allowed to do.
Your ACLs essentially. Yeah.
Yeah. It's effectively but that's the sort of technical side for the creation.
Right. Yeah, the technical of what you're talking about, like what is your job and should you be creating repos? Should you have access to create repos?
What we need to do this is, it sounds like if they needed this, It sounds like the procedure we might likely to have in the future is one where we say, it's not that you can't have a new repo created for you, but actually you have to justify it, please, a priori as opposed to post priori. Duncan?
I think you need to have some like degrees of process, because you need some things to be relatively lightweight, and then some things to need like proper, like acknowledgement, sign off, or whatever. So let me just give a couple examples. Like, if you, towards the end of like my project that I've been working on, I think it makes sense to like split out this library into a separate repository. It's like, well, the stuff's already all there. It's just reorganizing it. Like, there's nothing fundamentally new. It's just, and so you just need someone to say, yep, I see that's what you're doing. That's fine, right? And so you want something that's lightweight for doing things like that. And maybe that's what the Places guys are doing at the moment. I don't know. If they're just reorganizing their repos, but they're not like, increasing their scope or doing something new
That's
and
the word I'm
exciting.
looking for. Their scope. Yes.
Right.
Is this an increase?
So you want without having to escalate to a committee, you want someone to just go, oh yeah, I can see that's what you're doing. That's fine, right? And so in which case a process where perhaps it's not a crazy thing to do. Say, we'll do this, we'll sort of get it all ready as some private repos, and then go and ask, someone with just a technical remit to say, you go to Tex and say, can you make these public? Because we're just reorganizing these repos. And Tex can look at it and go, yeah, I can see that, that's fine. Right? Without having to escalate to a committee. And then you've got kind of the next level. It's like, well, we're creating this new repo because, we have the, the funding for this project, and it's been signed off, and we've got the budget for it, and, we're starting to work on it now. Please, can we, make this repo public? And again, that needs to be relatively lightweight. Like, the decision has already been made. It's just, so you just need to be able to check it against the list of the things that we're expecting to see. And then the last one is like something completely new. And then you've got to say, well, okay, are we adopting some new thing here? Did we agree to that? And that's where you need the process.
Do we know which one does this fall into, Terence? Tex?
Well,
So I would suggest if people are coming to Tex ought to be the first person to look at it, and then Tex can make the decision. Does he need to escalate to, get approval from the committee, or does it clearly fall into a bucket of like this or that, which is totally fine?
I guess my question though is I would still see it as a risk, and maybe this coming from the open source side of things. If somebody can essentially create a repo, whether it's public or private, and I don't have any knowledge of it until I stumble across it in whatever means that is. So my question is there a need where people should have the ability to create a repo, again, regardless of whether it's public or private, or should any repo creation automatically come to me or to open source office, and we have to create that repo? We can start it with the template, and they can go in there and remove and fix and whatever, but we have to be that first line of defense, if you will, that says, or any new repos that comes through here.
I have no problem with
that
Intersect
sounds
having
completely
private
reasonable.
repos.
If you want to have that policy text of them come to you, even if it's a private repo, I would say that sounds completely reasonable. If you want that to be that's still a relatively lightweight process, that they just have to come to you for that initial thing. And then, as you say, maybe like the bar is higher if it's public. That go on. I was interrupting other people. Ben,
Yeah,
I think you were.
I have no problem with Intersect having infinite private repos. Does not matter at the end of the day. Like, yes, there is. Okay, at some point there is an administrative overhead, but I think per private repo, a lot of that administrative overhead is temporary and fairly small. So I don't mind essentially people being able to create private repos. Not all private repos are going to have a destiny of becoming public, and I don't think it's worthwhile to necessarily treat it like they will. But go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, so what I would like to say to that point is this is a cultural problem. I have no problem with input-output HK or PN Sol or well-typed having infinite private repos within their repositories. These are not Intersect employees that are creating new private repositories under the Intersect organization. So the problem is actually our access control lists and who actually is of a certain stature within Intersect as an organization that should have that capability. Right now, we have obviously far too permissive rules with the organization, and too many people probably in positions that they shouldn't actually have. They don't actually need organization admin privileges to be a contributor on a specific organization repository. So I think that's the larger scope issue. Is Johnny just going out and name squatting private repos all over the Intersect organization on GitHub with no actual intent of doing anything with it, but oh, it's no big deal. It's not our problem because they're private or whatever, is a little bit too reductive of a stance to take, in my opinion. And particularly, again, because it is a little bit of a vampire attack, right? I mean, this committee has talked about, should we adopt in the KES agent that was developed by Well-Typed and make it part of Intersect? And there, where it was actually being developed properly, this committee, the open source committee, had a chance to vet and decide on, is this something that we want to take responsibility for? Whereas now what we have is these contractors who are primarily with IOG et al., who have this permission, and oops, now there's just a new repo. Can we just flip the switch and make it public? That to me is a little bit of a vampire attack, to be like, well, look, no, it belongs to Intersect now, because we can't just shunt it and throw it out to somewhere else just because we maybe disagree with it. So I would prefer to see that it gets developed exterior and then proposed to the open source committee or the technical steering committee to adopt it as part of Intersect. If we have no remit whatsoever in the world aside from that one, I think that's probably a good remit for the committees themselves. But go ahead, Christian, you got your hand up.
Yeah, the other thing to consider is any repository under Intersect, I have to manage, do data analysis, give it a maturity grade, and actively ensure that it stays within a life cycle. I already currently had to do it for 66 repositories out of 7 public repos. So I do think if it's going to be public, it needs some review process and consensus. If it's private, I'm not even worrying about lifecycle management for that. But as the owner of the org too, there is a cost for every repository and team member added. So it's a thing to think about. Because I think we're already currently at like $200 a month just for members.
Oh, go ahead, Johnny.
Yeah, just to follow on from something Tech said in chat here, I suppose I will put forward a motion to see if we can pull access to people automatically being able to set up private repos without oversight, and have Techs work up a policy by the end of the week for how the access permission would be given, or even just not even the access permission, but the allowance of a new repo.
Oh, go ahead, Neil, but you're muted.
Yeah. Could I suggest the motion is that in the interim, we would remove just temporarily, we remove the ability for individuals to create new repos, right? We're not making this as a permanent decision at this point, and we look to Tech to give us a policy that we can then vote on.
Yeah.
That sounds to me like you're seconding the motion in a sense.
I'm seconding the motion, but I just wanted to make it clear for the recording and the motion that the removal of the creation of private repos is we see this as a temporary control measure until the policy is made. We're not making a policy statement about that.
Yeah.
But it's just an operational statement.
Perhaps we should add age verification or AI assessment to see if people can come into repo. No, sorry, I'm just local politics.
Okay, so it sounds like what we have, if Johnny's okay with it, is a motion to temporarily revoke all permissions to create private or public repositories to non-Intersect staff, and Tex will present a policy for repository creation by the next open source committee meeting. Does that sound reasonable?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
So in that case,
and we suggest to Tex that that policy should balance like keeping things lightweight when they can be lightweight, and escalating to proper decision-making bodies when that's appropriate. That's kind of
we just
balance we're trying to get.
Can I request that the open source committee gets to make the decision, but we are consulted about that decision? That's all, right? Open source get to make this decision, right? Because I don't think it's a TSC decision to how the repositories are managed. It shouldn't be, but we would like to be consulted, please, so that we know what's happening. So,
Yeah, informed maybe.
Yeah, I would also
consulted.
suggest RACI matrix-wise. I
Yeah,
think
RACI
informed
matrix.
is enough.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is they're consulted, because actually we
It may be one of these category things. Like you may simply be informed when there's like boring stuff happening, like reorganizing, a library that needs splitting repositories.
Yeah, well, I'm not
consulted when there's something interesting happening, so that you want those different levels of escalation.
Okay, so I've added the language of the motion to the chat. If everybody could take a look, if there's no changes to that, we can do a formal vote.
How do you want to do that?
Let's just do thumbs in the chat, and we'll do yays, nays, and abstains. But go ahead, Alex.
1 second. What does temporarily mean?
Until the policy is drafted, everybody except for Intersect staff will remove the ability to create public or private repos under the Intersect organization. So Tex will have an activity today to start working on revoking or fixing the GitHub permission so that nobody that's not part of an Intersect staff group will be able to create any repositories under Intersect. And then his second takeaway will be to develop a draft of this policy for a presentation to the TSC and OSC during their next meeting, whether that happens next week or not. With all the travels of everybody, we'll see. So,
if we could adjust the motion then to define what temporarily means, so that temporary solutions don't become permanent, then I would vote yes.
Yeah, well, I think the point I was trying to make is we want to act quickly to stop lots of these things being created, but we're not setting the precedent that necessarily is the final decision. That's what temporary means here. Is we're making a quick, and I don't think that we're not making a permanent decision. That was the whole point by calling it temporary, right?
I agree. But as
what's
we
your
all engineers know in here, there is nothing more permanent than a temporary
I
solution.
understand that. So, how do you want to change that wording?
Rewrite it as you see fit in the chat there, please.
This is always the way of getting, how do you capture that? I'm sorry, Alex. How do you capture that? Yeah, that seems reasonable. Until a new policy is adopted. Are you happy with that, Alex?
Thank you, Adam.
Okay. So do we want to raise our hands and then we can count them and do a screenshot? Somebody can form a queue and that will get you the numbers.
I just had one thing to add before the vote.
Okay, go ahead, Christian, real quick, and then we'll do the voting.
Yeah, there's specifically 5 people I left with admin rights due to their function, and they clarified it to me. So I just wanted them to have to be a part excluded from the temporary thing in case of emergency. It's Moritz Engerman with the API CLI, 2 people on the Plutus team for the repository, and then Kevin and Sam.
Why do they need admin access to Intersect as an organization versus specific admin access to repositories that they're
No, it's admin to their specific repositories. That's
yeah, no, that's fine. What we're concerned with is the administration of Intersect MBO, the organization here.
Oh yeah. So
this is
I've restricted everything only to specific repos. There's nothing on.
There's nothing here that says people can't be administrators on specific repos. It's the construction of new ones. That's the only thing we're talking about, right? Let's be very clear that it's to revoke permissions to create. The magic word is create new repositories.
Okay? I know. I just wanted to specifically clarify. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand.
Sorry, just a second. I'm here now.
That's 7, and that's everybody. That's
seven raised hands, and that's all present.
Yes.
So the motion passes. So that's good to go. Tex, you can go ahead and execute as you see fit on that one.
Right, good, done. Decision made. Next.
As it stands currently, only admins of the Intersect organization can create repos.
That's a quick turnaround.
That's efficiency for you. That's what we like to see. Didn't even cost us 1 million ADAs. But all right, so moving on, well, we have a little bit of time left. Lorenzo has joined us. I think there's an update on the product committee and their vision 2030 or long-term 5-year roadmap. So Lorenzo, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, thank you, Adam. I joined for that as well. So let me share the links. So there is a public first draft version here. Some link. Vision. So the main thing is that that document, that version that you guys have seen, has now been divided in 2 parts. So there is a vision section, which has let me share my screen, as a purpose, mission, vision, and then just a connection to the strategy. And then there's a longer part, which is the strategy. So that's a little bit longer here. Yeah, the request is still as before. So I don't know how many of you will join RareEvo, but we're gonna book also a remote workshop if you can. This is the repo where all this stuff is held, and I think at least to this committee, I can ask you to comment directly on GitHub. That's feasible. So yeah, just do these two documents here. So just go through it and leave comments and questions, and like we'll do for the workshop, we'll incorporate everything afterwards. I don't know if any of you already had a chance to read this updated version or the previous version. Do you have any feedback or any comments or any suggestions? If so, I'm happy to collect them and bring them back to product committee or yeah. Anyways, whatever you guys have in mind.
Well, first and foremost, just for the record, because I did review the previous document during the Quebec workshop with Sam, having a very much shorter and concise document here from what I can see is definitely going to be advantageous. We got to get away from 20 to 30 pages or more of fluff and filler and really get focused on what we're trying to do and accomplish. Because you lost me like three paragraphs or 3 what do you call them, chapters into that last document, and I didn't know what we were talking about anymore. So I'm glad to see this kind of streamlining of the document so that it is much more palatable and digestible by kind of the everyday people. So thank you for the progress, but I haven't had a chance to review these documents, and I will try to get there. If not, I'll see you guys at RareEvo.
Yeah, perfect. Also, we'll send over, actually, perhaps let me do it now. I don't know who else will join the RareEvo. This is the link to the event, and I will put up also the link to you guys with TSC have an easier way to connect. Also, that the product committee would like to book some time just with TSC, so maybe we'll sort it out next week. So this is the link to the Loom event. If any of you is coming to RareEvo next week. Outside of this, also as you know, like with Tex, we are kind of covering up for Duncan, so we're doing a switch. So perhaps Adam, I also wanted to check if you guys had a chance to look at the proposed remit that we checked with Kevin. If you had any comments, if not, perhaps we need to make a timeline since the committee election will start in like 8 weeks, something like that. That was the second thing that I wanted to double check.
I haven't personally had a chance to review the proposed remit, but I'm also not planning on running for re-election after this cycle because I want to get back to actual development work instead of endless meetings. But so I don't know if anybody else that's here has had a chance to review that and had any feedback or comments that they'd like to put on record.
From my side, the same. So I also very likely will not run for a re-election, but I looked at the proposed remit. I also came up with some comment, not yet in your version. I shared it with some colleagues here at the foundation first, and then also with the currently elected committee members. So I assume, or what I expect is that we don't give individual comments, but comment as a elected committee, like how we see or how we could accept such a proposed remit. And this is currently, as best as I know, still a work in progress. So yeah, I have my own opinion. I can also share it already, but I would prefer to come up with elected committee members' comment instead of all individual feedbacks.
Okay, yeah, no, I get your point. However, like this is a document for you guys. It wasn't so. This was drafted originally from what you have worked on in that RACI spreadsheet with Duncan, and then we worked on it with Kevin. So this is your internal document. This is not shared with anyone else. So this is for you to work on and be happy with. So you can adjust it and edit it and suggest it or do whatever it is needed. So feel free to. This is not shared outside, Marcus. So just feel free to work on it with the committee as you see fit. And then yes, once you guys have reached an element where you have reach a point where you have enough comments to and state where you're happy with, then you can make a decision as a committee. So with a vote, I assume you guys are happy with this, and then you can bring it up to ISC and to the board. But anyways, I think my only request: have a look at it. If you feel you cannot comment other than that, if you think you don't want to add it to the document, you get your own chat, I think, on Slack. So that's fine too. I think we just need to keep talking about this so that when we start to talk about the elections, people know what they are applying for, right? As simple as that. Okay, that was it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Lorenzo. So I think that brings us to all of our impromptu created agenda items for the day. So does anybody else have any other business that they think we could address in our 20 minutes left of the public meeting here?
I might have another. Sorry.
Oh, text started first, so text then Lorenzo.
Sorry, I dolled up an agenda here quickly while we were chatting in the beginning, so I don't know if we covered all of those. Yeah, I think we're good, but just making sure in case anyone had a question of what's there, or if I need to add or change anything for this week.
I guess you add the remit to that agenda, I suppose, but it was only very briefly discussed, but it was in the meeting. But Lorenzo, what was your other thing?
So there is very well happening next week. So we're gonna have the booth this year. The interested booth is gonna be slightly bigger. So we wanna some committees are making some presentation and they're making themselves available. Maybe like 30 minutes at the booth, so that anyone that wants to ask them questions, they're there. We're actually making little pins so that you can be recognized as a committee member. So that would make things easier and nice. So I just wanted to check if, I think we asked this last time, but I didn't take a note of it. If any of you, and a lot of you are coming to Revivo, but anyone else is coming to Revivo. So I just want to make sure we have at least one person. Duncan is coming to Revivo. Good. Is there anyone else so that we know more or less how many people we will have around?
Unless his plans have changed, Marcus should also be there.
Yep. Good. So we have at least three people. So what we'll let you. We're making an agenda to what will happen at the Intercept booth, and if you guys want to, so you can either just hang around if you want, but if you also want to make like a quick presentation about what TSC has been doing and why it's important, then we can set like a slot there and we can advertise it. So you got people coming there, and might be also useful to recruit the next for the next round of elections. So yeah, for you three coming, just keep that in mind, and maybe someone like me or text will come following you, giving you your little pin, and then we'll let you know when that happens at the booth. That's that. Thank you.
Awesome. Very good. Well, if nobody else has, nope, Johnny, go ahead.
I'll just quickly check if there's sentiment on this. Now, there's an ongoing budget line item from Open Source Committee for Maintainer Retainer Program, and I attended the release meeting yesterday to speak to the Cardano node folk and different aspects of that team. to start arranging like a consultancy session with them to discuss this program, because there's going to be maintainers brought on. Is there overlap to the TSC in your opinion as the chair?
Well, the acting chair will say, I don't know that there's necessarily a need for the TSC to oversee like a maintainer retainer program.
No. Just about the reaching out to the different aspects and teams and working groups, because there's working groups under the TSC will be a part of the reached out to people. So I just wanted to see if any input was wanted by any members here.
Okay, is everybody familiar with the maintainer retainer program that's being developed by the open source committee? That might be a good place to start.
Please, I'm not familiar.
I can explain. So, one of the line items on the OSC budget is 50 individuals.
Actually, Johnny, what I really need to know is what is the intention of, given it's
the intention is to diversify the amount of maintainers that exist on both core repositories, or start providing some payment to people who are doing community repositories.
It's intended for people who are doing core development, perhaps, or what, or for doing. Is this related to the TSC's remit of core, or is it related for everything?
It's both core and community, because there's going to be core projects that have maintainers brought in from outside through this program.
And how is it seen? I mean, I'm just trying to get some. In which cases, if it's going to be core, and is it going to interact with the committees that report to this committee?
It's interesting because the committee overseeing the line item is the open source committee. So
is there no. Is there intention that they want to interact with that?
Oh, well, Adam has a raised hand.
Well, so I mean, I started drafting this idea and doing the mental exercises on it with Christian and Tex last year, like in Vienna during the open source summit there. The intent has always been that these stipend, and I would not call them paid, but stipended maintainer retainers, because we're only talking like $1,500 US per month is our napkin math right now. Okay. It is more to have an independent body that is not the core contractor doing contracted development on the repo. Instead, so they're there to triage issues, identify good first issues for furthering and enhancing community contribution to the open source ecosystem. And then to be there to be a guy that can approve pull requests and merges. So they do need to be technical to a degree to understand the code, but not necessarily a cracked core dev top of their game person. So
okay, so they are a technically competent, right, person who has technical knowledge of the core, the repositories on which they have this power. So they have to be competent, have domain knowledge on the repositories that you're considering them to be used for, and you are paying them a retainer, basically, as you say, a stipend, a retainer, to act, and they are acting entirely in their professional capacity with an eye to the community, not to their employer.
Yes, yeah, and
correct.
Right. Okay. So that sounds like the criterion. I think I would imagine if you're going to appoint them, how the only thing the TSC might be interested in having an opinion on is vetting them as they go on in some way, or having an opinion how they appointed. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, as it stands at the moment, I'm working on an application form for people to show their current experience to meet that technical competency. And I'm also I'm going to ask people to consult on assessment criteria, what kind of people they're looking for, that kind of thing, on the different core repositories. So I'm getting a list together of the repositories that will have people come in. TSC members are welcome to come to that meeting when it's set up. So that's what I wanted to see if people were interested or wanted to get involved.
So are you looking for the TSC to be informed, consulted, or be part of the decision making? Right.
Well, this becomes a question of TSC remit again.
Right, yeah, but what are you looking for as the people running this? What do you want? What certainty do you want?
Right. Well, and so real quick, Tex, before you jump in here, what I would say to to that point is there probably would be some criteria that these stipended or retained individuals would attend like the working groups for whatever thing that they are maintaining, and could then become the liaison that's not necessarily distracting from the core development teams doing the work, coming and presenting, hey, what is going on with Plutus and why is there this new repository? They could be that person that makes that presentation back to the TSC, for example, and gets our rubber stamp for creating a new repository or something.
Which could itself help address Marcus's previous concerns about not having eyes on what's happening in different decision-making processes. But yes, Tex.
Well, it sounds, Johnny, it sounds like the TSC should be consulted on the process at least.
Okay.
Right? That's right. I'm not trying to, you see, yeah, I'm not trying to create, I just think if we're not consulted on the process, then we don't know what's going to happen. But I think
exactly, which is why I've brought it to this meeting to see what level of involvement or overlap there is. So thank you for that.
I would suggest it's consulted, right?
Yeah, I would agree. The ask here is consultation. At the end of the day, how do we make this an accessible position, but how do we also protect the security of the development? We don't want to just throw someone in there.
Could you define what you mean by accessible in this context? You use the word an accessible position, yes?
As in able to be accessed by community members applying outside, like ease of access to application, I guess.
Right, but
not requiring 20 years of experience developing on Cardano.
I totally agree with this, but you are placing a level of trust in them as individuals and in their technical competency. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Which is why I want to reach out to the existing project managers or maintainers, because I want to get what levels of and also their input and who and what on the application side, so that there'll be collaboration there.
I get that. So I can perhaps, but we have running out of time now, but as we part of this process, I can make some suggestions as how I have seen this handled in my past. What were the criterion by which somebody had to do that in order for them to be eligible for this post? And that's more than we could talk about now. But I think we can make that more than a subjective. We can make it an objective criteria. That's what I was trying to say, right?
So the accessibility comes down to their like a part of this. If we have somebody who has a lot of experience as a maintainer across a number of different repositories, projects, whatever, and their experience with Cardano is in the 1 to 3 years, or they've dabbled, whichever one it is that they've spent the most time with, that they have proper contributions as an open source contributor and open source maintainer in this instance, there is or should be a small level of ability for us to accept the risk of having a current project maintainer mentor that maintainer as we go along.
So Tech, I'm not trying to create a huge barrier to entry here, right? What I am trying to do is to create a fact that there is a Rubicon. There's something they've got to cross. We have to find, because we don't know who these people necessarily are personally. This is the big problem with this thing. Is not the technical stuff is one thing, but the fact is there's a matter of trust here, a huge matter of trust.
And that's again is why I'm looking to define that, like what's the level. Christian, I know, has spoken previously to existing contractors about this, and mentorship is part of something they're willing to give to people that come on board this. He was telling me recently, so that might help as well. Christian, or were you next?
Yeah, I was trying to. I can speak to this because I helped architect all of it, but essentially we're keeping risk mitigation as a big piece in this security. What this is supposed to do is help the core teams just focus on their contracted work and their remits. This takes on the community management, helps with the adoption rate, and provides an opportunity to expand the talent pool over time. So that's the main thing. But when we're talking core repositories, there's higher standards to be met versus other projects. So we will select that. We'll build a list of maintainers, their skill sets. Intersect will provide some form of KYC just because of whoever we get in contract with. We need to have some background. And we already piloted this too with Cardano addresses last year with Adam. He volunteered to help work with the Cardano Foundation or the HAL team at Cardano Foundation to work on the TypeScript. They own the Haskell, and there's a joint partnership there.
Yeah, I'm not,
similar things.
What I'm trying to say is, if we have clear procedures and we accept them, that's fine. Right? It's just that, you know, we have to be seen to have reasonably decent procedures that we follow. That's all I'm asking, because actually, the integrity and the veracity of the code base is something that external people wanting to use Cardano look at. Does that make sense? It's not about it's about being not just doing the thing, but being seen to do it properly. Is what I'm trying to get over here. I mean, it sounds a bit fuddy-duddy, and I do realize it sounds, but actually, it's the sort of thing you've got to do to get past due diligence in the future.
No worry, Neil. I'll be the first maintainer to help you on network.
Sorry, Christian?
I was just cracking a joke that I'll be the maintainer to assist you on Ouroboros network.
All right, Duncan, you had your hand up though. Let's go to you.
So I've got a great big fat conflict of interest here, because I am one of those people who is not currently working on Cardano and possibly might be able to apply for this program, either personally, my colleagues, many people who do not work for me that I know, who used to work on Cardano, who are extremely good, and who are not currently working on Cardano because, you know, IOG internal politics.
This could be a path to get those people back, as you say, but there's a conflict with you being on the TSC.
Obviously, yeah. But so if I were to recommend, you know, to other people who don't work for me, for example, where I don't have such a conflict, is this a program for individuals, or is it okay if they work for organizations?
The intent was never to be a full-time paid position. So I mean, I would hope that either those individuals are working for somebody or are gainfully and pleasantly retired in other.
These are part-time positions.
Yeah.
But
not a full-time. We're not trying to pay you a full-time salary, but give you something to kind of keep you in the ecosystem and involved. And so it is hopefully a good way to at least retain access to some of that tribal knowledge that may otherwise be lost as people move on into other careers or facets of their life, depending on.
And it doesn't matter if that goes through their current employer or them as an individual.
I imagine that would just be a matter of signing the actual contract once you get to that point, and it probably would not be, I would imagine, a swappable role necessarily.
Like named individual kind of.
Yeah, well-typed can't swap a Duncan for a Bob's your uncle.
No, that's totally fair enough. Yeah.
But yeah, you probably could, I would imagine, handle the payment through whatever company you handle to work or happen to work for. I wouldn't imagine that being a conflict. I've had to do that with various contracts for different purposes in my lifetime, and it's never been a problem. You know, that's usually a matter of your tax accounting. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, that is a good point. So Johnny and I can then take that back to the OSC as feedback on the maintainer retainer program, just to keep in mind when we're scaffolding it out. And then once the OSC is ready to consult the TSC, we'll put another meeting or at least a bullet in the agenda somewhere.
It'll be 20.
Yeah, I've joined this today, but my understanding is that Johnny was going to progress this by talking to the developers.
Yeah, I'm getting together a list of the core repositories that are going to have new people brought on, potentially asking to set up a consultancy meeting with the people who are already maintaining those projects so that they can give me some criterion that they're looking for, and also consult on the actual applications when they come through so that there's buy-in. And also the TSC will be part of consultation now after asking in here.
Yeah, as we discussed with the developer, with some of the developers yesterday, potentially this is great because it brings in new blood. We just have to be careful to make sure that we respect things like security, that we follow the right procedures, that we don't bring in people who aren't experienced.
And to that end, I have written a series of initial questions that may go into the application that ask people to prove their exact experience. So if people want to see that document, let me know. I'll send them a link.
Oh, yeah, and how those projects manage their internal life cycles and sprints and development processes or whatever. Yeah, the retainers would be expected to kind of mesh in with the existing project rather than come in and pee on the fire hydrant. We're not appointing a new chief of the project. We're appointing a community member who should be seen as a equal, hopefully, if we can get it there. And we all realize it's going to be a bit of a culture shift away from the way things have been done, especially on a lot of the core repositories. So baby steps, and as long as we're making progress and seeing something good come out of it, I think it's worth trying at least. So
yeah, well, one of the difficult things is going to be integration into the team, Adam. So obviously we've got relatively small, close-knit developer teams communicating via internal Slack and other systems, and anyone who's being brought in is going to have to basically be embedded within the team somehow. So they'll have to, either they'll have to fit with the existing working methods, or new working methods will have to be devised.
But yeah, we did get buy-in from both Input, Output, and Tweag for their various repositories that they are primary contractors on to support this idea of kind of mentorship and integrating a community or shall we say independent maintainer into their repository flow. So that's their commitment. We'll see how things actually work in practice once we get the program started.
Yeah, and it's a hammer we don't want to force down from an exec position, because that never meshes well with anything in engineering.
All right, but so we've got good, clear takeaways on that. We are at the hour mark, so if there's no other business, we can go ahead and adjourn this meeting. I don't believe we have need for what do we call it? In-camera meeting this week, because we don't really have any contentious stuff to discuss that maybe is not ready for public circulation. So if you guys are all game for it, enjoy your extra 30 minutes of your day, and I'm going to call it, or at least motion to adjourn at this point.
Okay. Thanks, everyone, and apologies for not being here during the meeting.
Cheers.
Good. Thank you, everybody. Cheers.
Have a good week.
Good.